Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, we talk about Walker Buehler and if he's ready and back for the postseason. Talk about the offense and Dave Roberts, some of Dave Roberts' decision making here in the second half, and then we'll talk a little bit about the potential Dodgers opponent in a wild card game, the St. Louis Cardinals. That's what we got on tap for you today. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Thank you for making us your first listen, and make sure to find us available free wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Dodgers. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. Today's episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Make sure to join us every week as we get in on the action. I'm Samperio of Chavez Ravine Fiend. Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential won't be in today's episode. He wasn't feeling well, and I got him covered. So I'm going to talk about the Dodgers win over the Padres a little bit. Walker Buehler seemingly riding the ship and ready for an October run. Going to talk a little bit about Dave Roberts' decision making here in the second half and a couple reasons why he maybe made those decisions, and then look a little bit at the Cardinals, who clinched a playoff spot last night. They've won 17 in a row, and assuming the Dodgers don't come back and from this 2-game deficit here in the next 5 games, the Dodgers opponent next week in the wild card game. But before all that, a quick reminder: subscribe or follow Locked On Dodgers wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. And make sure to tell your smart device to play podcasts Locked On Dodgers. All right, so the Dodgers won last night 2-1. It was not the greatest offensive performance. They got 2 runs, and Walker Buehler made it hold up, which is a good sign. And what we're going to talk about right now, Walker Buehler had struggled. He had a 7.32 ERA in the month of September heading into this game. He mentioned last game that it was a little bit of him and his mechanics, and he just wasn't feeling right. And yesterday he was feeling right. He went back to a steady dose of fastballs. I believe he threw, it was 91 pitches or 90 pitches. I believe 50 of them or 49 of them were forcing fastballs, which when Walker Buehler's rocking, that's when he's rocking. He's dotting that fastball and then using the off speed to keep him off balance. And that's what he was doing last night. Kind of the theme of the whole year, where not striking out as many. He ended up with 5 or 6 strikeouts, but getting outs regardless. He was helped out by two double plays. One with just 1 runner on, but one with 2 runners on there later in the game, and Fernando Tatis Jr. at the plate, and then he got him to roll over on a fastball and get the double play to end the inning. So good sign. I tweeted last night, Walker Buehler can smell October, and as we've seen Walker Buehler in every time except one time, he's been great in October, and this is kind of what you expect out of him: 6-7 shutout innings, maybe 1-run ball. But this is exactly what you expect out of Buehler here in October, hopefully, if they get to the NLDS. And I think the other good sign is he feels comfortable. You don't want your pitcher heading into a potential postseason series not feeling right mechanically, not feeling right everything else. And he was feeling right. He said he worked on some things mechanically, went back, like I said, the strategy of fastball heavy first, and then going from there, attacking hitters. He had a no-hitter until the 5th, gave up an infield single to Hosmer, ended up giving up another hit to Hosmer later on. But overall, very effective, overall very strong, and a good sign for the Dodgers. He may start one more game on Sunday. I would imagine if the game matters in regards of the division, then he'll for sure start Sunday. If it doesn't matter and the division is out of reach already. I'm not sure what the plan is. Maybe they'll throw him a couple innings to keep him fresh. Maybe they'll just skip him entirely, have him throw bullpens in anticipation for an NLDS Game 1 start. But regardless of that, this was a good start to get him back on track, to get him back in the field, and to have him feeling good heading into the more important stretch of the more important stretch of the season, which is the postseason. In terms of other things around the game, Cody Bellinger was activated off the injured list and got a pinch hit. He grounded out, so fresh haircut Bellinger wasn't necessarily a success right out the gate, but he made contact, and that's all you can really ask for these days with Bellinger sometimes. And Albert Pujols did go on the injured list, but Dave Roberts said he was feeling the effects of his second dose of the vaccine. So I think there's a different injured list for that. So he should be back here in a couple of days. He's feeling better. Then it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do in turn, if they'll send a pitcher down or if they'll just maybe keep him on the injured list for the rest of the season. I'm not sure entirely what the plan is, but we're going to find out together. On offense, the Dodgers, AJ Pollock had a RBI single, and Trey Turner had an RBI double. That was the extent of the offense. Trey Turner had 3 hits. He continues to outpace the rest of the Dodgers offense. And the Dodgers had runners on just about every inning, just couldn't bring them in, which is frustrating in its own right, especially heading into a 1-game playoff the way it's looking. But the fact is they were getting runners on, which is a good sign. They got you. I know Yu Darvish hasn't been the best pitcher, but they got Yu Darvish pitch count up. They got him out of the game early, and they got into the Padres bullpen. Didn't quite work out the way they wanted, but like I said, the fact that they're getting runners on is a good sign. Leaving them on, not a great sign, but I'd rather them get runners on and leave them on than not have runners on, because then at that point you're one swing away, one mistake away from putting up some runs. So the offense will continue to be scrutinized and looked at here over the next 5 games. But for me, it's more about just seeing who looks good and who doesn't, and figuring out who's going to start in that 1-game playoff. I think that's the more important part. I'll talk a little bit about that here in the next segment. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dave Roberts' decision making and just some guys that are struggling here that the Dodgers really need to step up. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Green Room is the first social audio platform made for sports fans. The app is free to download, and once you're in, you can talk with me, talk with Jeff, talk with all of us, and other fans, and athletes and insiders in real time about your favorite team or sport. We host rooms every week for Locked On Dodgers, and you can join in on the conversation you listen to here every day. You have a chance to chat with Jeff and I every week, and maybe even be featured on the podcast, although it's a little bit different now that we are running YouTube. But hey, you never know, we might get you in on the version that is on podcast platforms. So go download the free Green Room app right now, currently available on iOS devices. Create a profile, link your Twitter, and join the MLB group, or follow Jeff at Snider to find out when we are going live. I know you won't miss it. Can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts on the Dodgers. See you there. Green Room, changing the way we talk sports. This episode is also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. And they're back and better than ever as football season is getting underway. BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests than before, BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. So head to the website on your laptop and mobile device. Sign up today with the promo code NFL100 for a 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. From baseball, football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, we are back, or I am back. It's the same week, but I'm back and wanted to talk a little bit about mainly 2 decisions that Dave Roberts has made here in the second half, but both have some implications for moving forward. The first one is a conversation that comes with, the observations, obviously, and it's the fact, and I don't know if we talked about it, or maybe I don't know if Jeff talked about it, but the fact that Dave Roberts moved the lineup around and has been moving guys around a little more than usual. Usually in September, the Dodgers are locking up the division or close to locking up the division, and he hasn't really had issues with people struggling to this extent. But the main one is Justin Turner. Justin Turner has been batting sixth for the most part here in the last couple of weeks, and it was a subtle move that I'm not sure too many people realized at the time or even paid attention to. But Justin Turner's been struggling here for a while now. In the second half of the season, he's hitting 235 with the 695 OPS. He's been 88 weighted runs created plus, which is below major league average. Major league average is 100, and he just hasn't really been that guy. He only has 4 home runs here in the month of September. All those stats were for the month of September, sorry, not second half. But regardless, he's struggling in the entire second half as well. I believe his weighted runs created plus for the second half overall is 97, which is close to league average, but still under league average. And for someone like Justin Turner, he has never really been a league average type of guy. So it's a little bit concerning on that end. Dave Roberts moved him down to the lineup. He's been batting sixth for the most part here the last few weeks. And it kind of leads me to question, is he a guaranteed lock to start the wild card game? Now, yeah, theoretically he is. I'm pretty sure the Dodgers are going to have him out there. But, if you look at numbers just based on recency, he's one of the worst hitters that's been getting full playing time here. It's Justin Turner and Max Muncy, the two worst hitters for the Dodgers here in the month of September. Now, I don't think they'll sit them both because they obviously have the potential to be one of the best hitters in baseball. But it is a little concerning. And with the way Gavin Lux is swinging the bat, if they get Chris Taylor back in there these last few games and see what he can do, then maybe it's a case of, that he gets some at-bats. But regardless of all that, it was just one of those moves. Like I said, Dave Roberts doesn't toy with the lineup too much. I know he's toyed with it a little bit with Mookie and Trey Turner, figuring out who's going to lead off and who bats third. But that was more of just kind of finding the way for those guys. He got Trey Turner late in the season. The obvious choice was to put him first, but then he was the Dodgers' best hitter. So he moved him third, got Mookie up in the leadoff spot where Mookie feels a little more comfortable since it didn't really seem to affect Trey Turner. But yeah, Justin Turner had been a staple in that 2, 3, 4 for the Dodgers for a while now, and now finds himself batting six, which honestly is what the Dodgers needed to do because they had better hitters ahead of him. Whether you think Max Muncy's a better hitter or not at this point, he has at least shown more power and the ability to drive in runs, where Justin Turner hasn't really done that either. He's I don't know, man. It's been really bad, and I think we've kind of overlooked it a little bit. He does have 13. The thing with Muncy in the month of September, they're tied for second with runs batted in. So they're still capitalizing on when they get the chance. Maybe not to the extent that they normally would. I know we've both seen both those guys come up with a lot of runners on and not produce. So just a thought of, would they bench Justin Turner for a one-game wild card? I don't think so, but it might be a conversation that they're having just based on the fact that, like I said, he's been struggling for a while now and not entirely sure when he's going to break out. The other thing that Dave Roberts did yesterday, and it's not that out the realm, but still a little bit different than what we've seen in years past, is Blake Trinan closed out the game and Kelly Jansen was available. He wasn't unavailable, but Dave Roberts believes that they're interchangeable, is what he said after the game, and that Jansen had thrown a lot here in recent weeks, so he wanted to give him a little rest and make sure he's fresh for October. And what we've seen in the past few years is, for the most part, Jansen's out there every time he was available. It didn't matter if he pitched a lot or whatever the case is. This year we've seen Trinan close out a few games, and especially in situations where Jansen was available, and then also in situations where Jansen wasn't available. So I think it's encouraging. I mean, even though Jansen's been good and he hasn't really warranted us freaking out when he comes in, but that doesn't change the fact that in October, when you see Kelly Jansen coming out in the ninth inning with a 1-run lead, we're probably not as comfortable as we could be. And The other part too is that Trinan has been struggling a little bit lately when compared to Jansen, not necessarily in giving up runs. Both of them have not really been giving up runs, but Trinan has been having more issues, more guys on base, and having, command issues a little bit. In last night's game, he did give up a home run, did put the tying run on base, and did go full count to the last batter before striking him out, or 2-2. But either way, he's been struggling a little bit. But when it comes to October, we saw it a little bit last year, maybe not to the extent that we wanted, but Dave Roberts wasn't handcuffed, wasn't chained to Kenley Jansen closing out every game. Obviously, we saw Julio finish out 2 games, the 2 most important games. We saw Blake Trinan close out Game 5 of the World Series. So he's willing to use guys in those situations that aren't Kenley Jansen, which is a good sign. I think we saw it in October, but we had never really seen it in the regular season, and now we've seen it here a few times in the last few weeks. And I think he realized that Jansen can't go every day, and that they kind of need to have people ready to go. And Trinan's done that role before and comfortable in that role, and he got the job done. So it's a good sign for that. I think that he'll do it for sure in October when they need to, and Jansen can stay rested and doesn't have to pitch. We've seen, even though he's been better lately, Jansen on back-to-back days, I would prefer not to see it. Hopefully the Dodgers, if they do get into the real postseason and the NLDS and all those things, that they don't need to use them on an everyday basis because they have big leads. But, I'd rather him if he's going to have to go back-to-back here, I'd rather him do it in October rather than the end of September. So just 2 things where Dave Roberts, whether it's out of necessity or whether it's out of actual growth, just things that have happened this year. I know, Cody Bellinger's started up in the lineup and moved his way down and found himself 8th by the end of it. Obviously, that was a little bit of an extreme because he was really bad, and we've seen Dave Roberts mess with the lineup before, and obviously it's come in the 2 years where they weren't in first place or weren't in command of first place late in the season. But for people that like to say that he doesn't change or he doesn't do too much, I think this year he's shown that he's able to adjust and try to maximize the efficiency of this team and this lineup and this pitching staff when it comes down to it, when they need to win. Obviously, hasn't worked to the way he wanted, but you're not going to fault someone for winning 101 games with 5 games to go. So there's obviously he's made some mistakes this season, but so have the Dodgers players. And we've talked about before how they don't get enough of this blame sometimes that Dave Roberts gets when it comes to actually executing on the field. So, yeah, going to come back now and talk a little bit about the Cardinals, who clinched a playoff spot last night, and kind of what the Dodgers can expect. I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen every morning and finding us every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, by searching Locked On Dodgers wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, or if you're already a subscriber, even better. So keep it locked on Dodgers. Built Bar, you've heard that name before, especially if you listen to this podcast. And if you don't love Built Bar, that means you haven't tried Built Bar. And if you haven't tried Built Bar, I honestly don't know what you're waiting for. Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars out there, hands down, bar none. I'll put that against any protein bar. And the best thing about protein bars, they have a bunch of different flavors. Every flavor is covered in chocolate, but they have a bunch of flavors under that chocolate. Coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, just some of the ones that you can find on BuiltBar.com. My favorite flavor is usually the flavors that they have rotating in and out, but I haven't had one that I would never eat again. So Built Bar, whatever your favorite flavor, whatever your style, whatever your taste is, they'll have a bar for you. If you go to Built.com, you can check out and make a mix box where you can get 2 of every flavor and see which one you like before you order them again. Or you can see which one you think would be your favorite flavor and order that one. The best part, too, is they're also healthy. They all got 17, 18 grams of protein, the calories under 180, 4 to 5 grams sugar, 4 to 5 gram net carbs, amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy. And they're also the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team, which is pretty cool. So right now, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's finish up with some talk about the Cardinals. We'll obviously preview them once the Dodgers are locked into the wild card game, maybe even talk to believe it's Lucas from Locked On Cardinals, and see what his thoughts are. But the fact of the matter is that they are locked into the second wild card. They clinched last night. They've won 17 in a row, and they are riding an all-time high. The good thing is that there's 5 games for them to go on a 5-game losing streak if they really wanted to, although they may change and shift their strategy a little bit here in the next week because they've already clinched. They can't go any higher. They can't go any lower. They're stuck where they're at, and they can line up their ducks to make sure everyone's healthy for that 1-game playoff next Wednesday. But, first off, for me, everyone's talking about the 17 in a row and all the Cardinals are scary and all that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. And honestly, I would rather them win out the rest of the season because based on probabilities, winning 20-something games in a row is not that probable. Now, baseball probabilities doesn't matter. The Dodgers have lost a lot of games in which they had the probabilities in their favor. But just for my personal sake, if they head into it with a 22-game win streak, I feel a lot better about the Dodgers' chances on Wednesday. Whether that sounds logical or not, that's how it is in my head. But the other part, too, is how the Cardinals are doing this. They were pretty much dead in the water. And, yes, 17 in a row is impressive, and they would have found themselves probably in the thick of a wild card race. But realistically, the Reds and Padres just kind of, let this happen, basically. The Padres have been one of the worst teams since August, and they, even if they had just gone like 500 in that time, they'd be either right there with the Cardinals or ahead of the Cardinals still. The Reds lost like seven or 8 series in a row or something like that. So, if they had just won half of those series, same thing. They'd be right up there with the Cardinals, even with this 17-game win streak on their back. And I wanted to take a look and see how they were doing it here because, they had, like I said, dead in the water, weren't doing that great, probably underperformed a little bit over the course of the year. I know they had some injuries and some issues, but especially after getting Arenado, the expectations were probably sky high. The Brewers really ran away with that division. But now the Cardinals, they didn't get close enough in the division to make the Brewers sweat, but they did make the Brewers wait a little bit to pop that champagne for winning the NL Central. So I go to look in the month of September and see how they're doing this, and they're led by none other than Paul Goldschmidt. They're led by Tyler O'Neill, and then Harrison Bader's having a pretty ridiculous month. Just in the month of September, Paul Goldschmidt's been worth 1.8 WAR on Fangraphs WAR. Harrison Bader has been worth 1.7. Tyler O'Neill worth 1.7 as well. Then you go to Nolan Arenado, who's been worth 0.8, who's 8 home runs in the month, 21 RBI. So not hitting as great, but a weighted runs created plus of 125, and all those other guys are weighted runs created plus of 177 higher. So they're being carried by those 4 guys, really, because other than that, they don't have anyone that plays on that a consistent basis that's been above average on offense. And Mundo Sosa has been just about league average, and then Jose Rondon or Yadier Molina has been slightly above average. Jose Rondon hasn't played enough, and then Dylan Carlson's been under average. Tommy Edman's been way under average. So they've been getting by, on the strength of those guys. Pitching wise, they've been getting by on the strength of Adam Wainwright and Jake Woodford, who's had a really good month. And then they've had a pretty lights out bullpen here. Giovanni Gallegos has 11 saves in the month of September. He's pitched 13 innings, has an ERA, not the greatest ERA, 3.29, but he's been able to be worth 0.7 here in the month of September. And then Jake Woodford, Adam Wainwright have provided the most value there on the pitching side in terms of the starters. Miles Mikolas has been whatever. They haven't really been, there's no numbers that significantly stand out on the pitching side. They've got a couple guys that have had good months. They've had Adam Wainwright. Even Adam Wainwright has a 3.44 ERA in the month of September. He hasn't been extremely lights out. And probably that's the guy who the Dodgers are going to face in the 1-game playoff, I would imagine. He's the guy that they would go to. And we saw him against the Dodgers, and, he ended up pitching into the 9th inning. But I don't know. For me, I feel more comfortable going up against Wainwright because he doesn't throw hard. If guys throw hard, you can get ramped up. You can throw a little harder in a one-game playoff. We've seen it with Buehler. He can ramp it up to 100 when he needs to. I'm sure Sergio will ramp it up to 97, maybe even 98 here in the postseason. But with Wainwright, he ramps it up. It's going to be ramped up to 90 miles an hour. With him, it's the curveball and throwing strikes. I mean, he's averaging less than 5 strikeouts over 9 innings, which is nothing really and very unheard of. And the other part too is Jake Woodford, who's their other starter. He's averaging 5.3 strikeouts per 9 innings. So these guys are getting it done without throw, and he only throws about 92, I think, of average fastball velocity. So they're getting by with these guys who don't throw hard. Assuming they're throwing strikes, and especially for Wainwright, I think the biggest part is he throws strikes not only with the fastball, which if he's throwing strikes with the fastball, Dodgers should be on that, but he throws strikes with that curveball. I mean, at this point, I think he could put that curveball wherever he wanted, and it's hard for you to get ahead in the count in order to sit fastball because, like I said, he can throw that curveball whenever. He can throw you a first pitch curveball and it'll land right there in the strike zone. He can throw you a curveball on 3-2, and if you take it, it'll be a strike more than likely because he throws it in the zone for the most part. I'd have to take a look at the numbers deeper, and maybe that's something we'll do here if once it's locked down that they're playing the Cardinals. But I got to imagine he's one of the pitchers that works in the zone the most. I would imagine he doesn't have a crazy chase rate because he throws a lot of strikes in the zone. So, yeah, and when you look at the Cardinals on paper, obviously they don't look like they should even compete with the Dodgers, even if it's a one-game playoff. Adam Wainwright is cool, but Max Scherzer is going to win Cy Young, or at least finish top 2 for Cy Young. The Dodgers offense has a bunch of guys that are a lot better than anyone the Cardinals have, other than Goldschmidt and Arenado. Tyler O'Neill is having a breakout season. He might be the Cardinals' best player, but even then, it's someone you haven't seen in those situations. He was in the playoffs last year, but the Dodgers have a lot of guys with a lot more playoff games played, playoff experience is the word I was looking for. But yeah, Tyler O'Neill's a scary one, and then Goldschmidt, Arenado. Although I feel like the Dodgers have, whether it's true or not, I feel like they're a little bit more comfortable against those guys just because they've seen them so much. They have way more scouting, and they can figure out how to get them out. Those guys didn't really hurt the Dodgers too much in the series where they played them. Harrison Bader, not that good. He's playing a little bit above his head right now, so I wouldn't be worried about it. The one that always worries me, whether it's warranted or not, is Yadier Molina, because he always seems to come up with a little bloop clutch hit single or a home run when he shouldn't be hitting home runs because he's not good at hitting anymore. So he's the one that worries me. But when it comes to the Cardinals, I'm not going to say I'm not scared. Yes, I'm scared. It's a one-game playoff if the Dodgers play them in that, and it's not comforting. But the fact of the matter is the Dodgers are a better team, so theoretically they should do better, and they have Max Scherzer on the mound, which makes me feel a lot more comfortable than I would if they didn't have Max Scherzer on the mound, although it would be Walker Buehler after that, and I'd feel way comfortable with that as well. But either way, just a quick look at the Cardinals. We'll get more in depth here if it becomes the actual matchup that they have. Still holding out hope that the Giants can stumble here the next few days and the Dodgers can take advantage and take that lead, although it looks like the Padres have kind of mailed it in a little bit, so I don't have too much hope for the last series when they play the Giants, and the D-backs are just not a good team. So, but we'll see what happens, and we're going to keep the positivity going and still have a chance at the NOS, so we'll see how that goes. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making us your first listen every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. If you're not already listening every day, Monday through Friday, why don't you add a day? And especially now, we got the playoffs coming up, last week of the season, a lot of things going on. Make sure to give us a listen. Subscribe to Locked On Dodgers wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube now where you can see us and see our beautiful faces. I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but you can see our faces regardless of whether they're beautiful or not. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vince Samperio. You can DM us on any of those accounts in order to get a hold of us. You can also send us a voicemail or leave us a voicemail or send us a text at 323-863-LOCK. You can always send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree, you just have to listen. Have a good one. I know we're your first listen every morning, but your second listen should be Locked On Bets. The Locked On Bets podcast is hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's Lock of the Day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast brought to you by BetOnline AG, wherever you get podcasts.